Hello everyone and welcome to Onward Lebanon, a television show on Lebanon Channel 6. I'm Isaac Sievers and this is our November 2021 episode of Onward Lebanon, a program about Lebanon City Schools, our staff, our students, and our programming. We want to welcome you to our show today and want to highlight today, as we continue to do throughout the 2021-2022 school year, our mission of building community. Each month we're going to take time to highlight this mission, look at the programming, look at the people, look at the ways that we are engaging with our community and engaging with each other inside of our buildings. We've reached the end of first quarter at Lebanon City Schools, and it's been an amazing start to our school year. Our fall athletic programs are wrapping up. We've had great success on and off the field this year. We've had great success in our music programs. We have several highlights to continue to look forward in the next several weeks in our fall athletes and our fall performers. First, our marching band is going to the national competition in Indianapolis on November the 12th. We want to wish our marching band and color guard a lot of good luck and success over there in Indianapolis. It's a great event and a wonderful opportunity for our kids. Secondly, our high school cheerleading squad, for the first time in program history, our game day squad and our performance squad have qualified for the UCA Nationals. That'll be held later this school year, sometime during the winter. But I want to congratulate those girls on a great season and good luck as they continue through those competitions. And then lastly, this weekend, our cross-country team, our girls cross-country team, will be competing in the state championships up and around Columbus. A fantastic opportunity for them to represent Lebanon Warriors, represent our community, and go and compete on a large stage. And so good luck to all of those performers. It's been my pleasure to be on the sidelines, to be in attendance this fall as we watch all of our athletes perform and all of our performers representing our school well, representing their families and their programs. It's been a joy to be able to see them prepare and work together as teams, and then just to see their excitement as they carry out those performances each week. It's one of those things I love about Lebanon City Schools, the culture of what we're doing here and the way that we represent each other. One plug that we have for this month, our fall musical, our high school musical department will be doing their fall musical the weekend of November 19th. That'll be held at our District Performance Center. I want to encourage all of you to go out and to attend. We've opened up spectators this year. We've had the ability to bring people in and support and to be a part of what's going on, and I want to encourage you to take part in that programming. So this year, as we continue to work through this programming, we want to focus on our mission of building community. We want to focus on what unites us. We began the year with our staff talking about there's so much in our culture, in our community, in our state, country that is division, and we want to get back to focusing on within our buildings, within our community, what truly brings us together. There's a great pride in Lebanon. There's a lot of warrior pride spirit, a lot of maroon and gold. And we, beyond those things that get out and support athletics or performances, what is it that brings us together as a community? We want to spend some time focusing on what truly unites us. And we believe that's wrapping our heads and our minds around this idea of building community. What does it look like when community is built? How do we define that? How do we put some parameters around what that looks like? And we're going to work our way this year through some of those goals and try to highlight student or staff programs that exemplify that. When we looked at community and mission, it's this feeling of unity with others as a result of shared attitudes, shared interests, and shared goals. So we want to really work on those goals, those interests, and then the heart around what we're trying to do at Lebanon City Schools as we work on building community. So as we continue to roll out the programming this year, that's going to be our focus. How do we highlight some of those programs where that's already taking place in our buildings? You know, one of the goals of the district is to create communities in classrooms, within grade levels and school buildings, on athletic teams, during co-curricular or extracurricular activities. That's part of our mission. It's part of the goals of the district. And we saw that witnessed this fall in our performances. We see that every day in our athletic and performing teams, but we also see that in our classrooms and in our school buildings across the district. And so today we're excited to highlight a program at Lebanon Junior High. So I want to welcome in this morning Alex Brunk, our new junior high principal. Welcome, Mr. Brunk.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the new position. I want to just spend a little bit of time here this morning introducing you to our community, those who may not know you, but you've spent some time in Lebanon City Schools. So give us a little background on yourself and and where they may have seen you before around the district.
Yeah, so my entire career has been Lebanon-based. I was a teacher here 3 years as a 7th grade history teacher, 6 years as an 8th grade history teacher at the junior high, and then got my administrative license and moved to Donovan as the assistant principal there for 3 years, and then moved up for the last 3 years to the junior high, and then this past summer was hired as the head principal there. So it's been this is my 16th year. So I'm excited just to continue to be part of the community.
It's great to see you interact with kids. I've really enjoyed watching that interaction with students and how you're building relationships with kids in your building. It's one of the things I saw very early this summer when I met with you. And I've seen you build relationships and then lean on those as we deal with tough conversations or things that need to be dealt with. So, as you thought about moving from the classroom into administration, or then from assistant principal into principal, what was really sort of a driving force behind that? Like, what are you hoping to accomplish in this role as a principal?
I think it's the relationship piece. As a teacher, yeah, you'd had relationships with 170 kids every year, right? And you see them every single day. I really valued that. I love history, but I value that relationship piece too. And so to be able to jump into administration, I liked going down to the 3rd and 4th grade building. My wife is a 1st grade teacher, so I was able to go down kind of to that level. I did like that. I love those relationships with those kids, and it's helping them. It's just helping their development across the board holistically. As a teacher, there was a struggle there with you had to teach, and you did have some time to build those relationships, but as an administrator, it's much deeper. And that's what I like, and I hope to continue to do.
Yeah, I think as I looked at moving out of the classroom and into administration, that scope of influence was a big part of it. 150 kids to now influence over an entire building. Right. The way that they, the culture that you set in that building then permeates out into those classrooms. And so I think you do a great job of setting the culture, and you and Mr. Camello, our new assistant principal there, being visible, being present in the buildings, interacting with kids is something that I really appreciate about how you guys are doing your job. So I want to get into a little bit of the program we're going to highlight today. Yeah. It's a program that's been at Lebanon Junior High for a while. This month, we'll be implementing this at the building, I believe. And so there's a name change.
There is.
In the past, we've done something called Redo Day at the junior high. And so those of you listening or watching may have experienced Redo Day, but we have a new name for it now.
Yeah, it's ID Project.
The ID Project. Yeah. Anything different about the ID Project from Redo Day?
There is nothing different. No, it is the same thing, just different brand.
So we're going to experience the same thing. Yeah. Kids going in can know what they're going to come out of that with. Do you know what ID stands for?
Actually, I don't. I was just told this a couple days ago, and I could probably guess based upon kind of the scope and the purpose of the program. There's a lot of, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in more detail a little bit, but there's a lot of kind of self-realization of who we are as young people, as emerging adolescents, and kind of what our experiences are, and I'm assuming that the ID has something to do with that piece.
Okay. So what's the goal of the ID Project? As we look at bringing this program to our students, what are we trying to accomplish? What's the goal of the project?
It is to build community, to collaborate. So, junior high students, they like to be in their silos, in their little, speaking of spheres of influence, this is my core group of students, and here are my core group of students, and here are mine. And I think the idea here is to break them out of that. And for 7.5 hours, we are involved with other people that we don't necessarily involve ourselves with day to day. And so there's a community, there's a collaboration piece, working together through all different kinds of activities. But then there's this general understanding of understanding other students' experiences. Oh, so they've gone through that. They've voluntarily shared that piece. Oh, that's what the push-pull factor is for that student. That's similar to mine. So it's understanding those that we don't necessarily understand because we're walking through the hallways and they're just kind of doing their thing. But now we're building that empathy piece. But then it's also understanding like, I'm going through this as well, and I'm not alone. And so there's a lot of that understanding and that empathy and that team building that is really, really impactful. And you do see a lot of change after the ID project gets put in place.
And I think that's one of the things that we're trying to focus on here is like what unites us. We come from very different backgrounds, very different experiences, but we all have some of these core things that we're all dealing with behind the surface, behind the scenes, under the surface. And so that I think there's great power in helping kids understand they're not alone in that. And I think that's one of the focuses of the day.
Sure. I mean, if I could jump in real quick and talk about that, at the very, very end, there's a time where everybody's just done. They're tired because they're emotionally spent. And students at the very end have a chance just to kind of share out anything that they have learned. And every time I've been a part of this as a teacher and as an administrator, you inevitably have students stand up and say, hey, Johnny, 2 years ago, we were friends and I kind of started ignoring you and I apologize. And what's great is you don't see handshakes. They walk across and they hug each other. And then the ball starts rolling. And it happens every time inevitably. And you have apologies and you see what the purpose of the ID project is, and all of those activities build up to that moment. And you see kids, they're walking out of school and they're teary-eyed. And and it's a really good moment.
Yeah, part of what we want to try to do here with this today is prepare families that may be watching this at home. What is your kid going to experience, and also maybe to use this experience to maybe educate some of our community and some of those things we're talking about. You mentioned something a few minutes ago, and I haven't heard this. Can you just explain briefly what you mean by the push-pull moments of those things? Yeah,
it's just the students' individual, what they experience, what they go through at school, academically, socially, at home. There are activities that offer them the opportunity to share what they're going through, and it's kind of those what is said there. If they voluntarily share it, stays there, and a lot of times the students go, "Oh, I'm also struggling with that." Right. So when I was part of it, I was a volunteer as a staff member, and I had a core group of about 6 to 7 students that I would work with, and I would share my story of my house. And I would talk about who was in my house when I was a kid at their age. And then I said, in 8th grade, my parents got divorced. And I talked about that. And you can see, oh, this guy is going to be real. And all of a sudden a couple of them would share and say, hey, that's my story as well. And it would just be a time for active listening and understanding of where they're coming from. And then some follow-ups, I'm in the lunchroom and say, I know now what that kid's going through. So I'm just going to say, hey, how you doing? I'm not going to talk about that situation, but I just want to say, hey, how you doing? You doing all right? And just chit-chat with them about their shirt or, video games or something. But I know that they were going through something and they needed that extra touch.
Yeah. So we talked a little about this small group they may be going, through the day with a couple of the different activities. Is there something, this culminating event? But what can I expect? My daughter's new to the building.
Right.
New 8th grade student there. What can we expect in terms of? We've never experienced this. How long is the day? What's the structure of it? Things like that.
It is a full day. And it is gender specific. So all of the boys will be on one day and all the girls will be on the other day. And they come down and they sit in a giant square around the entire gymnasium floor. It's a little awkward and they're just kind of staring. And then the activities begin. And so you'll see large group activities and then you'll see the small group activities. And large group activities, they're kind of split down the middle. There's just some fun stuff, right? Mindless fun stuff. So we're going to sit on the floor and play volleyball with a giant ball. You can't stand up, and they're all squeezed together, and they're playing volleyball. And it kind of puts everybody on an equal footing because you do have the best athletes in the building and the non-athletes sitting together, and they're all equal because they can't move around. So it's kind of fun to see. They have fun with it. There's a freeze tag, a modified freeze tag. We have to dive under students' legs, and when they start seeing the adults go through, their eyes get real big, uh-oh, here comes Mr. Brunk because he's going to unfreeze me.
Yeah.
You go dive in underneath. So there's those fun games, and then we have we start to get into some depth with the large group activities. And so we'll have the Never Have I Ever, and it's basically you pull one chair out of the group. Again, large group. And it's a student comes up on a microphone with Pete, the guy that runs it, and it's, never have I ever been on an airplane. And if you've been on an airplane, you have to get up and run. If you've never been on an airplane, you stay seated. And then inevitably, because there's one chair out, somebody's going to be left out, it's like musical chairs. And the really good stuff is when you see, never have I ever had a detention. And, kids don't have to run if they don't have to, but then you see the adults running and you realize that, oh, Mr. Brunk had a detention when he was in high school, and they get a good kick out of that.
We're people too,
right? I know, right?
We
are.
Too.
They razz you for the rest of the school year about it. Then there's back-to-back where you walk around and music's playing and then it stops, and whomever you're nearby, you go back-to-back and then you turn, and then there's a question. If you were on an island and you had a TV, what movie would you bring with you? And so you're getting a little bit more in depth of who these people are. And it's cool because you're not with your friends, right? You're with somebody that you've never been around before and you're learning about them. And then there's a conversation as a whole group about what a successful female student looks like at a junior high level. And so students can sit back and say, okay, what do I have on that list? It's kind of a cool collaborative piece. The big one, and what I think ID Project's known for, is cross the line. And that's where everybody stands on one side of a line, and Pete will ask a question, and then if that applies to you, you walk across. Some of the questions are superficial, some of them are deep. It's all voluntary. And some of them would be like, how many of you have parents that are divorced? And students will walk across if they feel comfortable. A lot of the staff members walk across. They're part of it too. And that's one of the things that Pete talks about, is like the staff needs to be vulnerable and to be able to share. And so there are some things like that where that's the big moment where you see a lot of students looking and going, okay, I'm not alone. I'm in this with other people. And they also say like, oh, the student is going through some stuff and I wasn't nice to them in science class. Those are the moments that we really cherish. Small group is more of, hey, let's talk about on a piece of paper who's in our home and what are some characteristics of those people. And then you can share those out if you want to, and you realize, oh, they also have 5 people in the family, 5 siblings, and wow, that's a big family, and so do they, and they can come together and talk. We give students get pizza, drinks in between, which is fun to let their hair down a little bit too. So there's a lot of stuff. That's kind of a snapshot.
That's a snapshot. It seems like a full day.
Yeah.
You mentioned that these activities, even throughout the day, we're going to give them the option to participate. Is this something that students have the option to do? Does everybody have access to do this in the building? But if I'm sitting back and watching this and saying, I don't know that my kid needs to be a part of that, that's something that we also make available to parents as well.
Yep, we'll be sending out information to all parents and all students with a permission slip.
Okay, yep. Perfect. Thanks. So one of the things, you've talked about this from different roles. I'm just curious from you, is there something that you've taken away from this day that's made an impact on you as an educator that maybe shifted how you did something as a teacher or as an administrator?
Yeah, I think it's a good signpost during the year of I'm in the trenches as a teacher and as an administrator, and just a reminder that these students are just not coming off of the bus and coming in and learning, but they come in with a lot of those push-pull factors. There's a lot of back and forth between the students at lunches and things like that, and that their story is there, and that we need to hear that story and understand that story and help them navigate that story every single day. And I think from an educator's perspective, that is always a good reminder, regardless of what we learn and what students decide to talk to us about. It is all about a reminder that they are kids and that they are somebody's children, and that we are in their care, and they're in our care, and that's important to remember.
I think that as educators, we get this, we understand it. It's important for us to remind ourselves every once in a while. Parents are sending us their most prized possession, right? And they're entrusting them into our care. And so I think how we interact with them, the experiences and opportunities we create for them, needs to be respectful of that. They're giving us their best, right? And they're giving us something they really care about, and we share that same concern and care for them. So a couple of last questions here. I'm kind of curious if there's, have you seen any good student stories or success stories or things that, shared from your perspective as an administrator, maybe from a student experience that you've heard or witnessed?
Yeah, and I think it was the end. It was that where all of a sudden there's apologies, and there's, hey, I screwed up, and then there's some private moments off to the side between students. I think that is always the big takeaway and it happens every year, and it's a really nice, it's a good moment. What I like about this is that not only is it voluntary to even take part in the program, it's voluntary what the kids want to share. Like, if you don't want to cross the line, there was a time when I didn't cross the line as an adult. I didn't feel like sharing something, and so there's that voluntary piece as well, which is really cool the way that's set up and that piece is set up. But no, I think it was just that end piece of that sharing, and seeing some friendships being rekindled, or some drama in the past that we know has been there and that we've been trying to work through is now out in the open, and there's some apologies and there's some accountability in front of peers about, yeah, I screwed up.
Yeah. I participated in a similar activity 15 years ago in my first job in Lafayette, Indiana, and it was called Challenge Day. Very similar to this, seems very similar. And I remember that day and those experiences, and it shapes how I approach things still today. And so our hope is that we create this opportunity. It's one day, right? It's one day in the life of a student for 178 days in a school year. And we're creating a moment. We're creating an opportunity by doing this, and hopefully sort of to step into their life a little bit and say, like, what about this? What about something else? But it's just one day.
Right.
Right? It's just one day. So how do we transition this out of that one day? How do we support kids going forward? And how are you as an administrator then trying to set things up to reinforce what happens on this day?
Yeah, and some of those relationship pieces that we see that we, as staff members, and we're looking over and we're saying, yeah, it looks like there were some issues in the past and they're now talking through it. We will have some follow-up with the school counselors to say, hey, just checking in on you, how is that going? We do plan to have a variety of lessons as the year progresses to build on some of the themes of community and collaboration and empathy and understanding others and understanding ourselves. We do plan on rolling those out as the year progresses. Our goal is to, once Thanksgiving is over with and this program is over with, to sit down early in December and talk about what do we want to, what did the conversations that we saw lead us to really want to dive into with the student body, and we feel pretty comfortable it's going to be along those themes. But it'll happen. Those conversations will be for the whole school because there's just good practice anyway to talk about those things during our homeroom.
Yeah. So I want to thank you for coming today. I want to thank you for your leadership and the amazing opportunity you're creating for kids every day, but especially on this day. We also want to thank the Lebanon Optimist Club. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but the Optimist Club every year supports this program. Their local service organization is typically participated in this day by donating a portion of the cost. This year they've donated $12,000 that will cover the entire costs of both the ID Day at the ID project at Lebanon Junior High, but also a similar project that takes place down at Donovan Elementary School called Fuse. And so, we dial some things back there at the elementary school. We scale some of this back to them at an age-appropriate level. But it's something similar that we're doing across the board in different locations. And I want to thank the Optimist Club for their generous donations and their support of Lebanon City Schools, not only during this experience, but throughout the year. So that wraps up our November session, an episode of Onward Lebanon. I want to thank you for joining us in this episode. I want to thank you for your continued support of Lebanon City Schools and partnering with us each and every day. We are blessed to live and work in a great community of Lebanon. We're blessed to, to be able to impact and shape what's going on in our schools. And our hope is that our schools are partnering with our communities, that as we work to build communities inside of our buildings, that also has an impact on what's going on in the community at large. And so we'll see you next month on Onward Lebanon as we continue to highlight the amazing students, staff, and programming of Lebanon City Schools.